Good morning.
Immigration seems to be this issue that comes up every so often, sometimes in line with a campaign, sometimes not, but then kind of falls by the wayside. Is there any sense of urgency? Is there room to actually get something done on this issue?
Well, I think it's an important issue. I'm not sure it's as important right now as the lack of jobs or the national debt or runaway government spending or our national security, although it's related to national security, but it's an important issue. And, you know, I don't approach this issue theoretically. I approach it from a real life experience. I mean, my parents were immigrants. My grandparents were immigrants. My wife's parents were immigrants. I've grown up my whole life around immigration. And I know immigration is an important part of our legacy. It's a critical part of our future. But we can't be the only country in the world that doesn't enforce its immigration laws. Just to add to what Senator Lieberman has said, I'll first begin in general terms by talking about the desire to live in peace and prosperity and freedom, because it served as an inspiration for many of the great causes in human history, not the least of which is the founding of our very nation. America is built on a simple but powerful idea that all people are born with certain rights, natural rights. These rights, the source of these rights is not our government or our laws, it's our Creator, and that there's no government that has the right to deny us those rights. In fact, a government that denies people these rights is an illegitimate government and loses its right to continue to exist. For Americans, this powerful idea should never become simply some words on a historical document. Without these words, the American Revolution would have been nothing but another colonial rebellion. And while these principles are the cornerstone of our foundation as a nation, they are universal principles that apply to all people, in all places, at all time in human history. Yet for much of our history, and even today in many parts of the world, people have been denied the ability to pursue this dream. The universal desire to live freely comes to us from our Creator, and therefore it's embedded deep in our heart. And when that right is denied to any people, anywhere, eventually, they will rise up and challenge those who deny them this God-given entitlement. Is the chance to live the way people all over the world live, with the freedom to pursue their dreams, with the freedom to leave their children better off than themselves, with the freedom to choose their national destiny by choosing their national leaders. These are simple requests. These are reasonable requests. And these are their God-given rights. We hope her people will have the same freedoms we do, so that together we can build a better world for our children and our children's children. Thank you. You cannot do anything without God. It's a profound and elemental truth. Not you can't do most things without God. You will not be able to do anything that you want truly in fulfillment without God. This fundamental truth and the departure of it is actually the very story of man's fall. For once man was in that state where it really didn't need anything. When man was first created, man lived a perfect life. They didn't know sin, they didn't know pain, they didn't know death, they didn't know suffering. They had the answers to all the questions, and all was perfect. But man was somehow deceived into believing that they could take more upon themselves, that in fact, life could be even better if they did some more things on their own. That if somehow we would just take it upon ourselves, there was things would be better. There was another lie interweaved in all of that, and the other lie was that somehow when you turn your life over to God, God keeps things from you, good things from you. In fact, when you turn things over to God, God takes it all away. Well, it was all a lie, and we have paid a terrible price. In fact, the story of mankind is the story of that lie, and of thousands of years of an attempt by God to rehabilitate us back and bring us closer to that reality. Peace as we understand it, not peace in the global perspective, but peace in the ability to take anything that comes your way and see the good in it. Peace is the ability to be happy in both good times and in bad, when you have pain and when you have joy. The ability to be happy with great disappointment and great triumph. And that peace will never come from any person, any job, or anything you do. It's supernatural and will require your complete reliance on God to achieve it. Let me tell you why that's so important. Because those of you gathered here today as graduates, as Christians, you are ambassadors of your faith, is being a light in the world. A light on behalf of your faith and of your institution and of the values that you have learned and reinforced here. A light in everything you do. When you become husbands or wives, a light in that relationship and an example to the world. When you become lawyers, a light to your profession and the world. And the achievements that you in another career you may go into. But you cannot be that light if you do not have that peace. And that peace will be challenged for you on a daily basis. It's a peace that will be challenged by fear, the fear of losing things, losing your prestige, losing your job, losing your position. That will be challenged by a fear of suffering. No one delights in suffering. We all fear suffering. I remind you that any time you fear suffering, remind yourself that God's wisdom is not our own. And the story of Jesus Christ is an example of that. Jesus, the long-awaited Messiah, when he arrived, most didn't recognize him, including many of the men who lived with him. They didn't recognize him because they were waiting for a political figure. They were looking for a king who would overthrow the Roman Empire, establish the kingdom in Jerusalem, and rule as a political figure. They couldn't understand God's wisdom that saw suffering as triumph. Which one of us would choose a cross, flogging, the disappointments, the people turning their back on him, the ridicule? Which one of us would choose that as a human concept of success? So God uses suffering in the world. We have an obligation anytime that we can to heal that suffering and to prevent evil from prevailing. But know that it will be a part of your life until the day you die. And yours should be a part of that voice. Do not be afraid to embrace these causes. Do not be afraid to point your finger at the violations of human rights. Because if America doesn't, no other nation on earth will. If no people on earth are willing to stand up and speak on behalf of those whose rights, universal rights, are being violated, what country on the planet will? Because ultimately that's the essence of our founding. Our nation wasn't founded on political principles. If it was, then the American Revolution was just a colonial rebellion. It was just another country that wanted to have its own name. Ours was different. The American colonists rebelled not because they were tired of being English subjects, but because they believed that every person on earth was born with certain rights. That your government is not the source of your rights. Your politicians are not the source of your rights. Your Creator is the source of your rights. That's what the organizing documents of this nation say. And if we stop believing that, and we stop fighting for that, and we stop representing that, we will lose what makes us different and special. In closing, let me say that days like today remind us of all these things. Because it was just 15 years ago that I sat at the Knight Center in a chair like the one you're sitting in now as a graduate of law school. My parents sat where yours sit now, and your family, just rows behind. This day is as much about them as it is about you, especially in a school like FIU, with the kind of student demographic that we have. You see, many of you are the children and grandchildren of people that had dreams when they were your age, too. It's hard to believe that, but when your parents were your age and your grandparents were your age, many of them wanted to be more than what they were able to become. It's not their fault. It wasn't because they weren't talented or because they didn't work hard. It's just because of circumstances. Some came from countries or societies where no matter how hard you worked, you could only go so far because your parents weren't the right people, or you were born into the right family. There wasn't real upward mobility. Others lost their country. Maybe they were lawyers or doctors or engineers in the nation of their birth, but their country was taken from them through a political turmoil. And so they came here and became dishwashers and valet parkers and bartenders like my dad. They woke up one day and realized that the hopes and dreams of their youth were gone. They would never be able to be who they had wanted to be when they were your age. Not because they weren't had the talent or the ability, but because it just didn't work out. And so for many of them, your life became their mission. That you would have the chance to do all the things they never could. That all the dreams they had for themselves would be realized in you. I hope you realize that maybe on the day you were born, they held you in their arms and in your eyes, they saw everything they ever wanted to be. And for years they worked and sacrificed, maybe 2 jobs, maybe long hours, so you could do all the things they couldn't. Today is an extraordinary day for them. They probably will never be able to describe it to you fully. And 15 years after that date for me, I struggle to grasp it myself. It's what I love about FIU. And it's what I love about America. That story I described to you is almost impossible anywhere else in the world. And what you and I have a chance to do together at this time in our history is to ensure that we are not the last generation of Americans who live in a country like that, but that in fact we continue to be a beacon of hope for the rest of the world, that one day they too can live in a place like the one you and I share. God bless all of you. Thank you very much. Congratulations.